What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to what is going to be a strange series of videos.
I'm having me a series of episodes.
Basically, I have turned on the camera and I'm going to talk about a hell of a lot of albums and songs, and however many videos this needs to be chopped up into, I'll just post them. I'll just keep going until I'm done because I want to catch up. This is always about the time of the year that I start to feel a little bit anxious that I need to talk about as many new albums as possible because the year end is coming up and I want to prove that I've listened to as much stuff as I can. And every single year, you guys know, I get on here and say I want to do less reviews. I don't just want to be this constant consumer chronically taking in every new release because it just makes me feel like a freaking NPC. It makes me feel like, wow, is my entire purpose in life just consuming what is presented to me over and over and over again? And like, it kind of is. That's kind of the nature of criticism, but I'm always like, no, I want to do more video essays. I want to add to the conversation, not just respond to it. And I get in my head about it. And every year, y'all know, I kind of don't do it. I kind of fall back into a cycle of listening to everything new, but this year's been interesting for me, and I'm just going to take my time and do a little personal update right now. This year's been interesting, kind of spreading my wings a little bit. Doing stuff with the game has kind of opened my mind to like, man, there's money to be made. Not just doing YouTube videos, and I love my channel and continue to plan for this to be my main thing, but I've got a whole other project I'm working on that I haven't really talked about here yet, and I'm not going to, and I've just been doing some stuff sort of off platform, and then there's been a lot of travel involved. Went down to Texas a couple times, went to London, got shingles. I know I already talked about how derailing that was, but it really was. I mean, I highly don't recommend getting shingles. I was rashy for like 6 weeks. And then I have my own growing pains. Just sometimes I try to hire people and then I'm not a great boss in terms of actually delegating work out to them. And, I'm acknowledging to you all that the channel isn't, where I want it to be in terms of consistency. And why am I saying all this? None of y'all care. Those shirts that say, no one cares, work harder. That's probably what I need to tell to myself, but I'm really in an exciting, creative headspace, and I think I just need to get more into a mode of turning on the camera, putting that on video. I see why people go from YouTube to TikTok, or at least they tend to start putting more effort into TikTok because something about that medium just feels like, oh, I can be so effortless here and I can just make something stupid and funny. And YouTube, the longer you do it, the more you're like, this video needs to be really well composed and really well conceived, and I need to make something that's super smart, and I want it to do super well, and you get competitive with your own self and you take the joy out of it. And so this video is almost like a self-imposed exposure therapy of just trying to get all of the rest of my thoughts out before kind of the year end. And then maybe I can do some other videos before the year does end. Because, man, I had one banked called like Country Music's Flop Era. I feel like I need to do a Lainey Wilson dedicated video. I have this idea about kind of the over Zach Bryanification of things. These are all things that I sort of want to talk about, and just been a little scattered doing some other projects, but here I am to do the thing that I do, to talk about music. And hopefully there was a big graphic on the screen so everyone skipped that, and now we're just going to talk about the music. Okay, I don't even know where to get started because I probably have 30 something things written on this piece of paper. Actually, I'm going to cut them up. Okay, a lot of cutting done. This just feels better. So I should get a producer. It just tells me what to do. Stand here. Here's the next thing we're talking about. Okay. The Hunger Games soundtrack. Love this as a start.
Through waiting grass, the months will pass, you'll feel it.
Basically, the new Hunger Games movie soundtrack is great. This movie is called The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songs and Snakes. It stars Rachel Zegler, who's kind of made herself a bit infamous on social media for some of her comments about the Snow White movie, but she sings in a lot of these songs, and so do a lot of your favorite country and kind of like folksy alt country artists. The soundtrack was curated by Dave Cobb and Suzanne Collins, who wrote the book, and we got songs from Charles Wesley Godwin, Sierra Ferrell, Molly Tuttle, Billy Strings, Flatland Cavalry, Bella White, and Olivia Rodrigo. It's seriously so good. And it's in that same vein as Safe and Sound with Taylor Swift and the Civil Wars from, back in the original Hunger Games movie. The standouts to me were definitely Charles Wesley Godwin's cover of Gillian Welch.
Oh, little red bird, come to my windowsill.
I love Molly Tuttle's song on here. I mean, there's something about her kind of more slightly willowy voice fits just the aesthetic of the Hunger Games.
He told me that he dearly loved.
It's also cool to hear Flatland Cavalry on the song Wool because I feel like it's this kind of like creepy, soft aesthetic.
Who's peeking out behind the wall?
Which I a little bit prefer to the songs on their album, which I'll talk about in a second. But my favorite was actually one of the songs by Rachel Zegler, and I haven't even seen the movie, so I don't know how this fits into the movie or if she sings it in the movie, but it's called The Ballad of Lucy Gray Baird.
When I was a babe, I fell down in my holler.
And it's like a bit of a jig, like it feels like dun dun da da dun 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 dun, like a sad limerick or something. But what a cool soundtrack, and Billy Strings, if you want to hear some guitar. And all in all, a win for so many artists that we love to get such a huge look in a giant soundtrack like that. Into it. Also want to mention Dylan Marlowe and Dylan Scott's Boys Back Home.
Here's to the boys back home drinking Duro beers on a
I feel like we've been in this moment where bro country was kind of in the doghouse for a few years, and there wasn't really many truck songs on the radio. I remember looking at that in my video about how every country song has these lyrics, how truck songs had actually fallen out of style. But I feel like they're kind of back with a vengeance. There is sort of this second look at bro country, as a lot of people that were maybe adolescents when bro country was popular are kind of coming of age now, and it's having like a little mini resurgence. And I definitely hear that in this song Boys Back Home, which is like, let's circle up the trucks and party with the boys back home. Is this a song you have heard before? Absolutely. The blustering rock guitars, the Friday night partying with a beer in your hand and your boys by your side as you're out in the field. All in all, it doesn't feel like the most inspired lyric to me, which is kind of what I've been craving from Dylan Marlowe. But I'm recognizing that it's fully a hit. You know, this whole little Dylan stunt that they pulled on social media where Dylan Scott was like, let me get on this song. It could be Dylan squared. We could do this together. It seems to have really worked, and the song is streaming like crazy, and I think this really could be this first big breakthrough hit single for Dylan Marlowe, who, when I talk to songwriters around town, every single person's like, dude, Dylan has it. Dylan knows what songs need and how they're supposed to sound. And I'm like, well, then I must not have it, because I feel like I just want him to say like something weirder than Boys Back Home, but I want everyone to say something weirder. I accept it for what it is, which is not my style, but probably most people's style. And I must admit, it is pretty catchy. Like, I have only listened to that song like twice, and I can definitely sing back like, here's to the boys back home on a Friday night. What we got. Woo! This one is jumping to be talked about. Oh, the Wilder Blues, 7 Bridges Road. So my big thought I wanted to say about this song was just that it's really cool that Luke Combs jumped on a track by the Wilder Blue. I've talked about the Wilder Blue a few times here on the channel over the years. I was obsessed with Dixie Darlin' and Palomino Gold and their first album. They're fronted by Zane Williams, who was an esteemed songwriter and singer in his own right down in Texas. Now they've been dropping new music, and I actually literally just saw on Spotify that they dropped an album today. It's November 21st as I film this, and I'm like, interesting that they dropped on a Tuesday, I guess getting ahead of the Thanksgiving break. But it's really freaking cool that Luke Combs always goes out of his way to sort of showcase new talent. He's literally how I found out about the Wilder Blue back when they were called Hill Country, and he tweeted about them, and that's how I ever found them. And so to hop on one of their songs, give them such a big look, and that is easily their best streaming one right now, it's like a champ move. They're really for you if you love harmonies, kind of like the Eagles vibes with more of a Texas twist on it. They're second to none at that. I already had their song from this record, True Companion, on my playlist. And BT Dubs, follow Grady Smith, favorite country music on Spotify. Do you see this? You know, 14,935 people do. You could be 14,936. Luke Grimes put out an album recently.
Wish that I could not go crazy. Wish that I could make.
If you don't know who Luke Grimes is, he played, who did he play? Casey on Yellowstone, or I guess plays him. Is Yellowstone over yet? Who knows? Who cares? I gave up. And the album is fine. Like, it's these kind of spare, singer-songwritery cowboy songs. It's hard for me to shake the feeling that it's like a bit of a LARP, but that's generally how I feel, unfortunately, when actors are making music. I think it's maybe because I used to work in the movies world, and actors are so, they're very good looking and they're very boring usually. You know, I've done so many red carpets and you talk to them and they're different than musicians in that it is their job to sort of be someone that they're not. And it's a musician's job to be someone that you are. And even when I see people from the show Nashville performing around, it's hard to shake this feeling that there's just a bit of a veneer there. And I'm not saying he doesn't earnestly love country music or singing, but the most unfair and also fair criticism that I think anyone can give music is just, I don't believe you. And sometimes it just comes down to gut feeling like that. And I could be wrong. But I gotta give the flowers on the song Where It's Blue.
They say time heals, but how long does it take?
Which I just think is a gorgeously crafted song. And not surprisingly, it's a solo write by one of my buddies, Colton Venner, who is just an amazing talent and an amazing writer. And this is a song about heartbreak with the hook, I guess the fire burns the hottest where it's blue. These feelings of extreme, intense love in the midst of the blue sadness. It's just a great song. And delivered well by Luke. I mean, it's a simple production, but that's the standout to me on that album. The new Muscadine songs. Muscadine Bloodline dropped 2 new songs. One's called Weyerhaeuser Land. The other one's called Low Hanging Fruit, and they're both bangers. Like, if you liked the vibe of Teenage Dixie, which it's crazy to think that came out this year. There's been so much music this year, and that's an awesome album. You'll definitely like these 2 songs. Muscadine they hustle. They're always putting out new stuff. It's almost like if you added 20% bluegrass into Me On You, and I feel like Low Hanging Fruit sneaks up on you of these 2 songs. Like, Weyerhaeuser Land kind of hits you way more in the face up front.
Jet moved down from up north town. Prettiest thing 3 counties round.
Low Hanging Fruit kind of grows, but they're both jams. Low hanging fruit. Like, it's fun. Then we got to drop in on Wyatt Flores' debut album or project or EP, whatever this is. It's 7 songs long and it's called Life Lessons.
I've been a girl's last call when the bar's closing down.
This is excellent. Excellent. It really is. I loved these 7 songs. In a world where so many people in this kind of lo-fi post-Zach Bryan movement are just playing E minor and screaming, girls don't understand these broke down boys like me, and like I'm this lonely outlaw cowboy and blah blah blah. It's starting to feel so derivative. Oh my gosh. I've championed this style, but it can't all sound the damn same. I'm starting to feel like when I go to some of these shows, like I'm at, the heyday of bro country where no one's really listening and they're just like, oh, that's fire. Given that backdrop, to hear such a sophisticatedly produced musical album, great writing, it's so refreshing. And I get that the writing on it, why it's very much troubled in a lot of cases. There's a lot of wrestling with drinking too much and orange bottles beside the bed and him asking like, what am I doing? Who am I becoming? But it's just backed up with real heft in these lyrics. Like, the imagery of an orange bottle is better than saying Jim Beam in my hand or whatever people would normally say. Rot Gut Whiskey. And the music just backs it up. Like, on Orange Bottles, I am obsessed. Obsessed. I asked someone I know in that camp, I was like, how did you get that drum sound, that deep drum sound?
This old town makes my heart beat on the thumb of a drum.
And they were like, oh, it's a timpani. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so good. And then the guitar playing on Life Lessons, you get this playful little bum, 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 like right before kind of the main hook.
I'm taking life lessons.
I got life lessons. Excellent. It's like so musical. I think the producers on this was everyone from Ilya Toshinsky to Tyler Woodward, Wyatt Flores, Austin Yakunis, and it just feels like such a level up from the stuff Wyatt's put out before. I mean, I love Wyatt. When you see Wyatt live, you'll just get it, and his band is tight and fun and cool and sincere. And I just love the risks they took. The whole outro on Astronaut, where you're going into this sort of spacey, someone told me Coldplay-esque sort of section, and it just ends with this big musical outro. Really cool and adventurous. And then you got humor on tracks like Wildcat, about him being not so great at football, but kind of being a wildcat in town.
'Cause I'm 6'5" and soft on the outside, helmet too big for my head.
You got sort of drunk driving reflections on 313. West of Tulsa remains a banger. And Wyatt's this very conflicted dude. And his voice has that kind of scratchy cry in it. But I'm just so pleased with how the record sounds. I mean, I think the first two tracks are my favorite in very different tones. Orange Bottles on maybe on the sad side, and
Yeah, who am I kidding? Who have I become?
Life Lessons on the more sort of winsome, happy, reflective side. And I love seeing that Please Don't Go, which is his big viral hit, is not a fluke. So I'm just pumped about it, you know. I covered Wyatt. He's in my either Who's Up Next in Country Music or my Under the Radar video from earlier this year where I covered like a bazillion artists. But yeah, living up to the promise for sure. He has arrived.